Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This presentation is being recorded and will run approximately 60 minutes, including question and answer time at the end, and will also be available in the Events Industry Council's Knowledge Hub. All attendees today will receive their CEs approximately 1 week after the webinar. Before I turn things over to our moderator, I would like to address a few logistical items. Attendees can listen to the webinar through their computers or by dialing in using the number and passcode provided by the Zoom software. If you have any questions, you do not need to wait until the end of the presentation to submit them. We encourage you to submit your questions using the question box seen on the screen. We will address as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. And next, we are also pleased to introduce a closed captioning tool. You can access closed captioning by clicking the CC closed captioning icon on the bottom right of your screen and then press Show Subtitles. And now I will hand it over to our moderator, Lisa.
Hi everyone, welcome to our virtual Global Meetings Industry Day. We are so excited to be joining you. Please forget any barking dogs. Kids needing help with homework. I'm sure it'll all be very familiar to each and every one of you logged on today. I am Elisa Peters. I am a CMP and a CMM, and I am a Senior Global Account Manager for Experian, Emirates Global Events Company, and I am Chair-elect of our Governance Commission. I wanted to take a minute to give you kind of the lay of the land during this call, or I should say during this video. And if you have a question that you would like our panelists to answer, feel free to use the chat box and the Q&A box. And within the Q&A box, if you submit your question, or if you see a question you really like and don't want to resubmit, feel free to use the upvoting tool within that question and answer box, and that will allow us to pick the questions that are the most popular to be able to address at the end of the webinar. And I'm going to try to leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end so we can get to as many of the questions as possible. And then there also will be information for all of us at the end. So if you'd like to submit your question via email, if we don't get to it, we'd be happy to answer that way as well. We really want to encourage you to chat with us because the whole purpose of this is for you. We want you to come away having learned something. We've already covered the closed captioning that's available today. And know that this recording is going to be published in the EIC's Knowledge Hub. And you get 1 full CE for attending this session. So if you're planning on getting your CMP, you are going to be able to get a credit for sitting and listening to all of us talk and submitting your questions. I would like to, without further ado, introduce our panelists for today, our experts, and my compadres on the CMP Governance Commission. First, we have Darshan Chinni. He is a CMP and Vice President of Event Planning and Strategy at Eventures. He's also a member of our Governance Commission. Second on the panel, I have our esteemed chair of the CMP Governance Commission, Barbara Connell. She's a CAE and a CMP, and she's Chief Executive Officer for the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy. Was that good, Barbara? All right. She became a CMP. I would like to let everybody know. She is one of our most tenured CMPs. She is the most tenured in the industry. She actually was part of the first CMP group in 1985. So she definitely has some major pearls of wisdom to share with us today. And she's been a member of this commission since 2014. Next, my friend with the awesome Las Vegas background that you're going to see, Tim Glanzer. He is Chief Elevation Officer of Elevated Meeting Solutions, and he is also a member of our CMP Governance Commission. He is a longtime Vegas resident, and he has been a member of the commission since 2016. And we have Deanna Griffith House, PM. She wins for the most initials after her name. She is PMP, CMP, CME, PCM and CMM, and she is Director of Strategic Initiatives for Spectrum Reach and a member of our CMP Governance Commission. And Tyra Warner, my favorite lawyer, but don't tell Barb Dunn I said that, Tyra. She is a PhD and a JD and a CMP, so no overachieving here. She is Associate Professor at the College of Coastal Georgia and a member of our commission. She is an educator and a contract negotiator extraordinaire and has been a member of our commission since 2018, blessing us with her wisdom. And then we've got Rob Webb, MBA and CMP, Managing Director of Meetings and Events at ASCD. He is a member of our Governance Commission and an adjunct professor of event planning at Marymount University. He has a passion for education for the past 25 years and has been a really fun addition to our commission since 2017. All right, I am going to actually give you some background on the Governance Commission until Barbara's able to get her, her stuff working. The Events Industry Council launched the CMP program in 1985 to enhance the knowledge and performance of meeting professionals and to promote the status and credibility of the meeting profession and advance uniform standards of practice. The CMP are uniquely qualified to plan extraordinary events aligned with organizational strategy. It's a base from which other specialized credentials can be built and is open to planners and suppliers alike. We're proud that the CMP is recognized globally as a badge of excellence in the events industry, and the CMP is the industry's most global and prolific and rigorous credential with more than 1,000 active CMPs in 55 countries. The role of the Commission overall is to establish and assist the Events Industry Council, the Board of Directors of the Events Industry Council, and its staff by providing advice and guidance on the CMP program. The Commission is a standing committee created by the Events Industry Council's bylaws. And basically, anybody with a CMP is welcome to serve. So if you've always wanted to serve and want to give back to your industry, every year we actually do a call for nominations so you can participate. And the goal is really to ensure that the CMP's policies are developed and maintained and are consistent using best practices in professional certifications and designations, and to ensure that the CMP's program represents all appropriate sectors of the meeting profession, and to ensure that the CMP program is psychometrically sound. Can you believe I was able to actually roll that out? And legally defensible. So hopefully that wasn't, could you tell I was reading? Let's start this off with a poll to make sure everybody's awake after their chair yoga. We want to poll the audience and see what impacts COVID-19 has had on your business. And you can check all of the items that are actually applicable to your world right now. Attendee event cancellation, decreased revenue, expanding event insurance, furloughing staff, moving your event locations, relocation of staff, resource allocation, transitioning to a virtual event, or travel disruptions. Feel free to pick any and all that are applicable to you. I'm going to give you like 10 seconds. All right. How are we doing with answers in the background, friends? All right. So attendee and event cancellation, not surprising, 93%. Decreased revenue, also not surprising at 70%. Let's look at some of our top performers here. Transitioning to a virtual event, I'm with you on that one, 63%, and travel disruptions, 57%. And then we can see some of the smaller furloughing staff at 30% is pretty awesome. And moving event location, 23%. that's pretty awesome as well. So you're kind of staying put or switching over to virtual, which is great. And only 27% at relocation of staff, which is amazing. So, all right. Well, with that said, it's great to get that background because now we can kind of know where everybody is at right now and use that as part of our discussion. So I'm going to kick it off by asking our panelists to comment or to give us some advice on staying connected, organized, and grounded with their team and their family. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have a high school senior who was supposed to be graduating in about 2 weeks, and everything's pretty much been upended. His end of year prom has been canceled. His end of year is pretty much switched online. We don't know if and when he's going to be able to actually meet in person to do a physical walking down the aisle. And I know, Tim, you're in very much the boat. A lot of you have had to swap over to become three-ring circus leader, including barking dogs, Zoom meetings, and helping your kids with homework, all while you're trying to get your job done if you're working from home. So I really want to kick it off by asking, why don't we start with you, Rob? Let's talk about how you have made the transition and how you're keeping your team connected and staying grounded during this challenging time.
Great, sure. Hi, everybody. So I think this is a great way to kick it off as far as staying connected, because I think everybody on this video chat and can really kind of be a leader on this, because for me, I feel that the event industry is really about making those connections and bringing people together. So I think this is something we can be leaders on in this time. For example, for us, what we do is we use whatever technology we have to use. So in my team, we use Microsoft Teams that we get together. On my class, we use Zoom. It's whatever you have that works, can do that, even if it's just the, just picking up the phone and calling someone. I think what's important, too, is that not just to have a meeting, right? Because we're all used to being in the offices together. Well, some of us are used to being in the offices together, and we get, we'll talk about business or something like that, but there's also the, just the chat and making that connection and how was your weekend, how was your day, whatever, right? How are your kids doing? So I think it's important to have those different set up times to just do that, whether it's just a coffee chat or a lunch or Friday happy hour or something like that. It's just getting together and making those connections with your teams, and then people within your organization and people outside your organization too. As for family, I have a teacher. My wife's a teacher, so she's actually in the other room teaching virtually now this week, and my son's in senior in college, so he's in the other room on his class. So it's definitely a new world, but I think it's something that we could all be a leader in and push this together.
All right, sounds great. Any other panelists have any thoughts as far as this goes that may want to talk about how they're making the transition?
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Darshan.
Hi.
I have to tell everyone, Darshan is webcasting in from India. So what time is it there now?
It's 7:40 now, 7:40 in the evening.
Thank you very much for being a part of this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Just to share my thoughts, we have been into events business for almost a decade now. And to be frank, we never faced any situation like this before. It all started in the month of March. One fine day, I get up and I was about to prepare for my conference, which was supposed to start in a couple of days. And all of a sudden, we get a call in the morning that, hey, we plan to close it. We plan to postpone it. We want to cancel it. We don't know what we want to do, but this is not going to happen in the next 2 days. So as of now, please keep everything on hold. This was followed by calls for throughout the day and another day. And in just a matter of 2 days, we have found that whatever events and meetings we have been planned for the next 3 months, everything is postponed. This has pushed us into a situation where we have to find a solution to keep our events going on without affecting the health and risking the attendees' safety. So that's where we started doing the research with all the possible technologies we had. So far, we have been using, webcasting. We have been using conference calls, video conferencing, all this stuff. But how are you going to connect a larger audience on this platform, and how are you going to make them, how are you going to keep them engaged is our challenge. So then, when the team started sitting and discussing on the possible opportunities that we have and possible resources we had, then we got to a point where it is like we had to find two types of solutions. One is to cater to the immediate requirement of the events that we have in hand, and second is a long-term basis. The first one, to cater to the immediate requirement, is like we have started analyzing and we have started researching about the platforms which can do a complete virtual event solution to us, wherein you can have about 1,000 to 2,000 delegates participating at the same time, and it's almost similar to a physical event. Only thing is everybody is connected to their devices, whether it's a laptop or a mobile phone or an iPad. And then what are the features we have in it? Like you have the 3D exhibition booths, you have resource centers, you have Q&As, you have, and the advantages of doing a virtual conference are good, but virtual conference is completely based on technology. Till date, technology has been a very important bone in the entire event structure. But now, with this scenario, we are going to be dependent on the technology completely for almost say another 2-3 months, because we're not looking at any physical event happening as such. Then came the second question. Okay, when all this is done and said, okay, the markets are open, the business starts opening up, the city starts opening up, and people start coming out, and you come up with a requirement from some of your clients saying that, yes, now we want to do an event. So how are you going to face it? The first thing that hit our minds was, when you want to plan an event after all this is done, the first and foremost question any attendee will ask is, how safe is it for me to attend your event?
And Darshan, I think we're actually going to get into that in 2 questions. So I don't want to jump ahead too much.
Sure.
That's an awesome point. And I know we did want to ask you specifically what your organization is doing to support your customers and your clients and your students over this month. So what are you doing specifically to support your stakeholders?
As of now, we are trying to negotiate contract with a couple of virtual conference platforms so that we can offer our clients who have got immediate requirements. Like some of the conferences can be postponed for a later date, for some has to be conducted right now, and because that has been in planning for quite some time and everything is in pipeline, and it's only thing that they cannot avoid a cancellation. So we had to move it onto a virtual conference, and we have been assisting other clients with their 3D booths and all that stuff. And then we are also been discussing with the venues what are the safety and security measures that we can discuss and start implementing for the future events, so that when everything opens up, we can go ahead with the clients and
just transition right into it. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think every morning we all wake up and it's like ping pong with the news. Like one day the world's going to reopen, and the next day it's things could resurge in the fall. So I think now managing change, this is more relevant than it's ever been in terms of our industry, because from a day-to-day basis, your head's just kind of going back and forth as to what am I going to be doing with my event in July or in September, in November. I think your point about really needing to be nimble and go from a virtual event to a live event or a hybrid event where you've got both options, because people might not want to travel right away is absolutely critical. So Barbara and Tim, I want to actually ask you a quick question about how you're navigating the decisions you're making about, or your clients, Tyra, in your case. Maybe we start with Rob and go to Tyra. Why don't we talk about what you're doing for fall and winter events and how I know this is like top of mind for a lot of the planners that are on this webcast right now, and for our supplier members who really want to keep those fall events and get their employees back to work. So tell me what you're doing and how you're navigating risk of kind of fall, winter, and into spring of next year's meetings.
Sure, I can go first. For fall, we do have a fall conference planned for October. And that's still go, that we're planning for it to be a go. What we are looking at doing, though, as well as possibly making it at least a hybrid event. So part virtual, part face-to-face. One of the things that we are looking at doing right now is possibly having a summer all virtual conference for a couple reasons. One, for ASCD is based for educators. So right now, teachers are going through a lot, as a lot of people are. But we're sending out a survey today, actually, to say what are the kind of things that are you going through right now? What are your concerns about going back in the fall? So and there's a lot of platforms out there, so we're researching platforms. So the goal is, one is to be in front of our customers for the summer, but also for practice, just to be able to do something like this. So we're going to try to maybe do a smaller one in the summer so that we can kind of get our, our skills sharpened to be able to do that. So that in the fall, the hope is certainly to have the conference, but it might be both a hybrid if we still run it for those that maybe can't travel yet or are a little hesitant to travel, or if we have to switch to full virtual, we can do that. So that's one of the ways we're trying to get ready for the fall, is maybe do a little practice during the summer as well.
That's great. That's awesome. Barbara, do you want to talk a little bit about what your organization has done this year, how you've pivoted?
Yeah, we've very much been ahead of the curve, fortunately, and it's certainly by no grand plan, especially for this type of an event, but ASGE has had taken the last couple of years to really upgrade its audio, video, streaming, delivery of all of its education. So by sheer circumstance, we've been ready for this occurrence, even though we weren't planning for this particular occurrence. So for the past year or so, we've been delivering all of our education simultaneously live, as well as by streaming. And that has proved to be really advantageous, of course, as you can imagine. We can't have people come to our center. We have a training center here outside the Chicago area, for those of you who may not be aware. And we generally bring in 10 or 12 groups a year that do hands-on training, a medical organization, of course, and we can't bring them in because, of course, nobody can travel and the lab is closed. But we've been able to stream a lot of our content, and that's been a real advantage for us. Now, having said that, our annual meeting, which was scheduled for the first week of May, has been canceled, of course, and that would have been here in Chicago. We bring about 15,000 people to our annual meeting. So we've been trying to dissect a little bit of those segments that would have been contained in the annual meeting and deliver those virtually. And we've got 3 or 4 different segments that will be delivered over the summer that way. And frankly, in the meantime, before that, we've been doing weekly webinars on content related to COVID, as well as content related to practice operations for those practices that can't be open during this time. So we've been trying to mix it up, be creative, deliver content to our members that maybe they would not have otherwise gotten. But fortunately, we've had the streaming in place, so we've been able to do that.
And not to put anybody on the spot, but when are you making decisions? When is your drop dead date for what you're going to do with fall meetings? Does anybody have any thoughts on, I think right now, a lot of people are tuned in and are kind of, they're in a very similar situation to you, Rob. They might be thinking of going the barber route. Do we take it entirely virtual? But you really want to try to, the face-to-face meetings, it's very hard to replace being with people. So when has anybody put kind of a drop dead date on when they're going to make the call as to what they're going to do with their fall programs?
I think that's difficult right now, especially under the circumstances, not really understanding when we're going to be allowed to leave our homes safely.
Right. Yeah.
So, right now we're kind of trying to understand the governmental decisions and how we're going to be able to do any type of events in the fall, simply because of the health and safety of the individuals that would be attending the conference. So I think until we understand that, it's very difficult to make any type of decisions. You put a plan together, but everything really is based on the health and the safety of the attendees for the face-to-face stuff, and also the interest. Is there, when we come through the other side, is there going to be this grand interest to meet face-to-face in the beginning until we understand what the venues are doing, how they're preparing to take on events again. And I know that all the big brands are working together and within their teams to provide that information to all of us so that we feel safe going back into these facilities. But really it's a day-to-day evaluation. I know right now we have some October business that we're moving forward with. We actually have some September business that we're moving forward with. But if this goes into summertime, that's going to be difficult to continue to showcase any type of value because people are just going to have some fear about going into the large assembly into those months if we haven't controlled this into the summertime.
And that's a great segue for Tyra, our attorney on the call. What are your thoughts? A lot with the group ban every day, you'll hear a governor say one thing and then the president will say another thing. And when does the pandemic expire, right? If you have a great force majeure that actually outlines pandemic, then, how do organizations address the fact that there are a lot of hotels that allow them out of their commitments I don't want to get too much into the contract part of it because really this is about the change, but ultimately, as a lot of the questions that I'm seeing popping up are around this risk and around what do we do and when do we have the ability to make the call?
Sure. Well, and I think a big thing that businesses need to be talking about right now is they need to be deciding, and I think personally we're all deciding too, our levels of risk aversion or risk acceptance. I think everybody has their own personal level, a willingness to accept a certain amount of risk and our risk aversion, and we're finding that now personally. But I think businesses too need to do that, and that's really all contracts are, is an apportionment of risk, and so that's what we're finding with these meetings. I find some groups that are willing to book fall meetings in hopes that this will be over. They're willing to accept a little more risk because we don't know. And I just noticed a message pop up in the Q&A or in the chat saying they're just flat not going to have any meetings until the first quarter of 2021. That's a little more risk aversion, but it's certainly a strategy that's acceptable if that works for them. Just let's put it off a little bit longer. So they don't have to worry about that financial risk. The issue is, of course, when you are dealing with things like force majeure, which doesn't come with those cancellation damages, it is so dependent on the specific facts surrounding that moment in time. And we just don't know. There are lawsuits right now of people who decided to terminate their contracts without liability on meetings before the state started saying you can't meet. you know, versus a day later when those were out and, you know, people got away scot-free. So, you know, there's so much that's so fact dependent and we just don't know what's coming.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm going to segue in. Deanna, I know I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the components once we do go back to meeting face-to-face again. What are some of the areas that you're looking at and scrutinizing in terms of the logistics behind a face-to-face meeting that you feel we might need to start reevaluating what is business as usual? Do you want to go talk a little bit about how you're proactively putting plans in place for future face-to-face meetings if you're one of those planners that needs to continue planning as if they were going to do it face-to-face this fall, but you know, may have to pivot and do it virtually? What are you thinking about right now?
Yeah. So I'll echo what Rob said earlier. We're doing a lot of thinking around hybrid events. Just had a call this morning with an association that I helped plan for, and we're actually, you know, looking at putting it on the calendar for an in-person event, but also offering the hybrid option, which could easily pivot to, you know, online only. We're also pushing some things into early Q1. I saw a couple questions in the Q&A piece where people were talking about what do we have to be thinking about regarding meals and, you know, the buffets and those related things. I don't think we know exactly what to think about with that. I think that's a big partnership that we need to make with our event venues. To Ken's point, the big brands are already thinking about what's next from a safety and security perspective from their seat in the house. You know, are there seize guards everywhere? Is there no longer such thing as a buffet, and what impact does that have on budgets? Because you know, a lot of times buffets are the best economic route to go. You know, there's this whole conversation going on in the media about, you know, everybody being tested for a fever before they enter any kind of a venue. And, you know, is that going to be reality, period, at all? And if so, what's the additional cost impact for these events? And then, of course, you know, especially from my seat in the house where I do a lot of work with associations, are there going to be members left to be able to have the money to spend to come to these events? That's one thing. And then are there organizations going to allow them to travel on the organization's dime? So there's a lot of factors that I'm sure all of us have thought about at one point in time, but just you got to get the list, you know, as it pops into your head and start writing them down and join these conversations like we're having now and get perspectives from people that are doing this every day and talk to your former, you know, places where you've done work in business before to make sure that, you know, see how they're approaching it, what they're hearing internally. And I think, you know, we've all said it in various forums today. We don't know what we don't know. So we're all going to learn this together and come out on the other side to a new reality. We're not going back to normal, that's for sure.
I agree. I think that really we're just going to have to wake up and kind of navigate. You know, I keep saying in the next 2 weeks, we'll know more. In the next 2 weeks, we'll know more. And then 2 weeks go by and we're still navigating. But I guess it's job security. Our organizations are looking to us for some guidance and some leadership. I think it's a unique opportunity to lead within our teams because there really is so much power in meeting, whether it be virtually or whether it be face-to-face. Tyra, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the role of what you see, the value of the CMP, like why now for the CMP, and what role you see CMPs playing within their organization?
Sure. Well, you know, as an educator, you know, that's for the last 18 years, although I am an attorney, I'm a full-time faculty member. You know, one of the interesting things about education is that when other things happen, when crises occur, disasters, or the economy goes south, education always takes a boost. Because when other parts of the world go south, people go to education to retool, and I think it's the same with certifications. When things become uncertain, a great way to both bolster the economy and help yourself is to focus your energy on retooling. So I think this is a great time for people to focus on the CMP, especially those who maybe have been furloughed or who've been laid off or have unfortunately lost their jobs or find themselves at home maybe with more downtime than they really want. I know from my years as a meeting planner and having been in this industry for 30 years, that we're not the type to just sit around. It's not really in our DNA. So it's a great time to use that energy. And I think as far as CMPs in the organization, again, I think for organizations that, maybe are having to not do what they have always done. We're really having to be innovative right now with our meetings, with our organizations, since there's no more, this is the way we always do the annual meeting, or this is what we typically do. This is a great time for CMPs to shine within their organizations, to use what we've learned as CMPs and to really take it next level and to integrate, because I think people are willing to listen now in ways that they have never wanted to listen before, because it's a new day and we need that innovation and that energy and that infusion. So I think this is really the CMP's time. Whether you're wanting to get it or whether you're wanting to use it, I really think this is prime time.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, I'm going to take the opportunity because we've got 20 more minutes until our stop. And we have some great questions in the Q&A section, so I want to make sure we get to those. The first question submitted by Mary was, what resources would you recommend to make a virtual or hybrid meeting the best experience possible? Who wants to field that question? Do I have any takers? Rob?
This is Deanna.
Deanna?
This is Deanna. I'll take it. I work for a large corporation, so our first and usually only option is to go to IT and see what options exist already in the organization. They've already done the dirty work in getting it passed through legal and contracts, probably already in place, or they can help you with, an RFP or whatever you need to do. So start with your IT group and then go to procurement. I think that's the best place to start. We use internally, we use a virtual conference tool right now, and it's always able to use rooms and various breakouts, et cetera, in that tool. You just got to explore a little bit more. So start with IT and let them do the legwork for you.
And Rob, I know you were experiencing a whole bunch of different dog and pony shows in terms of different companies and taking your meeting virtual. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking for during those presentations.
Sure.
What's the focus for you?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. I've been fortunate. There are so many platforms. I'm sure everybody's email box has been mine's been filling up with different people try our platforms and everything. A couple of things I'm looking for is I want to see how the engagement works with folks. There are some where if you see an attendee that you want to connect with, you can actually go into a video chat box like this and talk to each other, which is pretty interesting. One of the big things I'm looking at is how sponsors and exhibitors are allowed to come into the thing, because that's important, because that's a potential revenue stream for us, right? So there's a few that I've seen where you can actually click on the exhibitor. They can digitally scan your badge, so you get credit. You can either, and you can just download their information if that's something quick and easy you want to do, and or you can go into a video box too. You can actually click on it and have a face-to-face conversation with the exhibitor. So those are the kind of things I'm looking for because I'm trying to have this a full experience as possible. And there are a few out there, and you just have to do the demo. And then after the demo, actually do the test, because I like to see how it actually works. So that's really what I'm looking for, the full experience for both the attendee side as well as the sponsors and the exhibitors as well. How does that all come into play?
Excellent. And I thought there was a really good question that was submitted actually by a people. But what's the liability to the association if you hold an event and someone gets COVID? Tyra, do you want to take this? I know we've talked about it on previous chats.
Yeah, and I've avoided it for the most part because I'm not sure. Huh?
I said nothing like putting you on the spot.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm not sure I have a really solid answer to that. And in fact, we've been discussing this on one of my hospitality lawyers groups. You know, there's not, like most legal questions, there's not a black and white answer to that one either.
Not a ruling.
A lot of that depends on you know, the specific facts. I don't think holding a meeting in and of itself, I mean, I think if you hold the meeting while there's a legal requirement that you not hold meetings, well, now there you've done something illegal. So I think that certainly there's a liability risk. But let's say there's no legal limit on holding meetings, and you hold a meeting, but you don't follow the recommended guidelines for cleaning things. Now you haven't maybe done your due diligence, but you haven't done anything illegal. So, you know, maybe a little risk, but not as much. But then the question that really I think a lot of people are asking is, could we be sued? And the answer to that question is always, sure, you can be sued. They just may or may not actually be successful in the lawsuit, but it's still going to be expensive. And we're kind of a sue-happy environment here in the United States anyway. So, you know, there's always a risk of liability, I guess, or at least threatened liability. But it's going to depend on the facts. I don't think it's a slam dunk, and I do think it depends on the specific facts, but I don't think just if the bans for meeting are lifted, if the cleanliness standards are met and somebody gets sick, well, unless it's a mandatory meeting that you've required them to attend and there's a legal ban on meeting, but you made them go anyway, and you knew somebody who was there was sick, but you made them come anyway, I don't think there's liability per se.
Okay, great. Appreciate that. So Tim, I'm going to ask you this question from Devin. How do we feel about the recovery of the industry as a whole? You sit right in the heart of Las Vegas, which is a huge tier 1 destination for meetings in the United States and globally, really. What do you feel about the recovery of our industry as a whole?
Thanks, Lisa. I'm actually very optimistic about the recovery. However, you know, due to the day-to-day changes and the dramatic day-to-day changes, I mean, this is unprecedented in the fact that day to day our whole world continues to change in a manner that none of us on this call or this conference has ever seen in their lives. So it's pretty shocking, actually, the magnitude of that. So how do you fire up your crystal ball, so to speak, and really understand what we're going to look like on the other side? I think that because of we're human beings and we love to engage and be together, both physically and virtually, that meetings come through the other end very healthy. However, I am cautious on the timeline on that. And I'm also cautious that we do that with safety, health and safety as our #1 priority, that we're not rushing back into meetings just to rush back into meetings. Although, you know, many of us, all of us on this call are attached to that. I think that there needs to be a protocol to really understanding how we can do it and be safe and engage each other. I also believe that we'll never be the same on the other end. And when I say that with the hopes that it will be better, we'll be more resilient. It's a word we love to use currently. But meetings are going to change, I believe. And on the other side, we're going to have a different perspective and appreciation of the business that we're in. But I do believe, and I'm very hopeful, that on the other side that we do have a prosperous industry. Once again, I just think it's going to take a little bit longer to get back to that. You know, when you look at, it's already the middle of April, And we were just a few short weeks ago thinking that everything was going to be back to normal May 1st. Now it's June 1st. And the reality is this probably bleeds into the summer in some sort of way. And then, you know, where do we go from there? And everything's contingent on how we can get back together in a safe environment. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think that, you know, this industry will get it done. There's so much dependent on the individuals in this industry and how we unite together and create an environment where we once again can meet. But I'm very optimistic that the meeting industry will be stronger and more resilient on the other side.
So let's pivot to if you're job hunting right now. We know there have been furloughs, but there have also been layoffs. And we had a question from one of our attendees about some tips or some thoughts on how you job hunt in this particular environment. Can anybody speak to thoughts on that?
This is Barbara. I'm happy to jump in on that one. In fact, over the past 4 weeks, we've actually hired 2 new staff people. One of them was in the job for 2 days before we closed the office and had everyone work remotely. Excuse me, and then a week and a half later, we brought in another person who has never met their staff face-to-face. So it's a very interesting time. But what we did toward the end there, certainly training both of those people, we've done it virtually, phone calls, Zoom, everything we can do. But I would say to candidates, be prepared to conduct your interviews by Zoom, certainly by phone, and it may be a little disconcerting to do that because you're not meeting people face to face. You're missing some of the body language. You're not shaking hands and getting tours of things the way you might normally get them. But I think with everyone's new reality and new thoughts on how they're going to interact with people, the experience might be different. But I think that the market is hiring right now. I watch the association forum job board frequently just because we end up posting things there, so I'm always tending to them. But there are a lot of jobs out there right now. I think the interview process is going to be very different, and probably the due diligence process on the candidate side will be a little different. You may have to do digging a little bit of a different way to find out if this is the organization you want to work with. But it may expedite things too, because it's easier to take an interview by phone maybe rather than getting in the car and going over and kind of coordinating schedules that way. But yeah, we've already brought on 2 staff during this time.
That's great. Thank you so much. And
I'd like to just add, since we're on the commission, get your CMP.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to that point, Rob, I'm going to put you on the spot. Marina apparently asked a great question. How is the EIC going to move forward with best practices for terms on social distancing and meeting sets and food and beverage? I guess, I know Chris is kind of sitting in the background, Chris Peck, who is the master of our 3-ring circus. I know the staff behind the scenes are probably working furiously to figure out how to, in this rapidly changing environment, what are we posting in terms of, I think it's a great question, social distancing and best practices as far as meeting sets go. I know I saw probably about a month ago, the CDC actually published a very long guide for in-person meetings because they were meetings of all sizes, from the Olympics to a board meeting for 10 people. I think it's going to be interesting to see how we roll out that large document that pertains, I think it's like 56 pages long in 9-point font, how we roll that out into a set of guidelines so we can move back into face-to-face meetings. I don't think anybody right now at this point, I think our staff is is working on that behind the scenes and is really digging into some of those guidelines from a health and safety standpoint. So I would say, Chris, I know you're there on mute, but probably keep an eye on the CIC website, because I'm sure we will be posting some resources. And actually, I think this is a great time to segue, because I know we've only got 6 minutes left for this. Let's now talk about some of the resources for the events industry as far as coronavirus goes, so that you know what page to actually check in terms of what's next and best practices moving forward. On the Events Council website, it's https://eventscouncil.org/coronavirus. You can actually find a ton of different resources. It's aggregated materials really designed to educate and inform as quickly as possible and to deliver them to our CMP and our greater meetings community. So definitely feel free to use that as a resource. I know a lot of the organizations that sit on the EIC's board have their own resources as well, MPI, PCMA, ASAE. So I would definitely bookmark those pages, because those are always going to be the latest and greatest. And that's where you're going to find the most distilled information that would apply directly, whether it be to virtual meetings and their best practices or face-to-face meetings. So definitely screen capture that page, because I think it'll be helpful for you. And then let's talk about obtaining your CMP and your education hour. If you are looking to renew your CMP, or if you are looking to attain your CMP, you're going to get an hour's worth of credit for attending this meeting today. It's going to be uploaded within the week. You want to make sure that your email address that you logged on to this registration and registered for this conference matches the email on your EIC portal account. And you can have a personal and a business email address, so you can always go in and update your profile online in order to make sure that all of your email addresses are updated and relevant. And you get you're going to get a confirmation of your attendance in an hour, and this can be for 1 hour's worth of credit, and that's going to be used for self-reporting. If you renew, there's actually a really easy renewal tool, if you haven't already gone in, that you can upload immediately. As long as it's a CMP accredited provider, it's really easy now to log your attendance at events. And I know for Global Meetings Industry Day, there is a ton of stuff going on. There's so much education today. You have so many opportunities for hours. So definitely stay engaged, whether you're renewing or whether you're thinking of applying. Stay engaged today, and you can always access all of these via video as well. So you can go back through. It's going to be actually recorded and uploaded, and you can go back. You can share it with people in your office. And we really appreciate that you were with us today and that you joined us today. And I hope that the rest of your day is absolutely fantastic. And thanks to my panelists. You are awesome, even when I put you on the spot. I much appreciate it. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Great day.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.